This next series is going to deal more with movements for posture. You may not think about posture exercises, but they're extremely important, especially this day and age, with a lot of folks that are desk jockeys, for lack of a better term, that sit at their desks all day. If you think about the posture of people that work the typical 9 to 5, they're in that seated position with their hip flexors shortened. They're in this position, I'm exaggerating a bit, but whether they're typing or on their phone in front of the computer, we've got this shortening of the front side of the body. The shoulders are rounded, and then they'll get in their car, drive home. They might sit at their dinner table and eat, but we're in this posture way too long. So movements that kind of extend the hips, open up and pull the shoulders back and down and back, gets us kind of retracted here. A more upright posture is a very healthy and positive thing to do for the spine, just for the whole core. Again, I've talked about what the core is a bit in these videos. Really, if you cut off the limbs, that's everything that includes that core. So hips and glutes, it's not just the six-pack, the rectus in the front of the body. It's the backside, it's the hips, the glutes, up into the shoulders as well. So we want exercises that work the entire body, and these postural exercises are quite important to include in these core movements. So I'm going to show a few variations. A lot of this first series here is going to be different kneeling positions, and they're going to be kind of a diagonal movement. And what I just talked about at the beginning about trying to get the shoulders upright, a lot of it comes down to the T-spine, or the upper back, the thoracic spine. So when we're in this forward rounded posture, we've kind of got this little bit of rounding in the upper back. So we want movements that kind of get us upright, like I said, and kind of get those shoulders back. So these different sorts of rotational movements help open up the thoracic spine, okay? So there's different variations. It really depends on the member, the client that you're working with, where they're at. As far as the positioning of the body, typically I'd start someone on 2 knees. They can even start with their basically heels on their butt, and having something simple like a PVC pipe and just going through this movement here. So we're getting kind of thoracic rotation and extension at the same time, which is what we're going after, right? Rotation and extension, because I'm going from a low to high. It's not just straight across, which is a movement that we've talked about before with the tubing and the rip trainer and things like that. But this one is more about a low, think about the diagonal angle, low to high. So again, 2 knees down, heel back on the butt is one. It's kind of level 1. The different options as far as tools, really just whatever you have available. A light dumbbell, again, low to high. The movement stays very similar. And this is a particular exercise. These sorts of diagonal postural exercises aren't ones where I'm trying to load up weight. All the exercises in the gym don't always have to have a ton of weight on them. Bench press, squats, deadlifts, things like that. I always say as long as you maintain good form and strength is our primary goal, then yeah, throw some weight on that bar, get the 45s on there, and let's move some weight. But these particular movements here, I'm big on quality over quantity. It's more about that range of motion, and in this particular group of movements, trying to get that thoracic spine to extend and open up. So you'll see, here we were down here. So we kind of, when we're back on our heels, we kind of lock the lumbar and the lower body out of play. So it's just thoracic. We're just getting movement for that thoracic spine. When we come up here, we're going to require that individual to engage the core a little bit more, because I don't want the hips to be turning, okay? We don't want to turn the hips. So we're trying to keep the hips relatively square, in this case to the camera, and again, just turn the shoulders. So again, we can start with something simple, like a PVC pipe. We could go to the dumbbell if we want to add a little bit of load, okay? We have a slosh pipe here. This is a light slosh pipe. So this one here, it's more of a dynamic weight, if you will, because obviously there's water in there, so it's going to shift. So it starts, when it's here, the water's in the back of the tube. And when I bring it up, I don't know, you probably can't hear it in the camera, but the water shifts to the front, in this case, the left hand of the tube. So we've got that dynamic loading that requires more stability. Anytime you're using an unstable tool, it requires more stability. So that's another option there. Again, we're on 2 knees. The one that I use for most folks, once they're fine with this, is kind of a single leg, half kneeling, we call it, position. So we've got 1 foot here. So we've have a little bit of a less base of support here since we're off 2 knees. As far as positioning here, obviously the wider my base of support, the more stable I'm going to be. When we start to narrow that base, bring that foot in, now things get a little bit more challenging because we've narrowed that base of support. Okay. Again, once they're fine with just kind of a static piece such as PVC pipe, dumbbells, slosh pipes, the ones I use the most typically are tubing. So I'll demonstrate that here. But regardless of the tool that you're using, the actual movement itself remains very consistent. Okay. So again, this is my go-to position for folks that are able. One foot in front. As far as how wide the base is, depends on the client. We want to get them relatively squared up if possible. So this hip and hip are relatively squared up. Okay, so I'm not out here. Pretty square here. So in this case with the tubing, take the hand here. Again, the movement's very similar. I start here, facing forward with the shoulders. Hips should be square to the camera. And I'm going to rotate those shoulders. And you can see kind of the balance challenge that's required. So it's here to here. So I start, arms are relatively straight. There's just that soft bend, I call it, in the elbows. So you can see me kind of falling off a little bit. So I'm actually engaging that right glute, okay? And big time core, oblique, abs, rectus erectors in the backside. And I'm trying to stay tall. I always tall spine the whole time. So we don't want to be coming down here, arching the back at the end of the movement. Okay, so nice and straight, shoulders back, and getting that nice rotation through the spine. Okay, so that's one I like. Obviously, you do both sides. The tubing's one I like a lot. The rip trainer here is another great option. It's a little longer, so I'd have to come out a bit. But the movement again is going to be very similar. So we're here, and we're just going low to high. Okay, low to high. And again, this is just, I believe, the medium band as far as resistance. It's not about adding a ton of load to these movements. It's about range of motion, trying to get that thoracic spine rotated and extended so we've got a nice taller posture. The other option after this is to take them off the knees. So I'll go back to the tubing since that's the one I typically use the most. So now once we come off the knees, we've changed the game again. So I'll start on the knee. So I usually actually have them start on their knee, so the same position that they've been doing for a couple weeks, and then once we kind of elevate them or graduate them, if you will, they're going to come up off the knee. So almost like a lunge position. Okay? So we're here, slight bend, stay low, and this is going to be more challenging because we're off the ground, obviously. Okay? Again, you can see the movement very similar though. Okay? These types of exercises, these postural exercises, I'll show a few others. But this dynamic diagonal lift is one that I would incorporate into the beginning of a workout, part of your dynamic warm-up. If you're foam rolling, things like that, some dynamic movements, jumping jacks, ladder drills, things like that, then I would get into this sort of exercise that help activate the core and really turn the whole body on. It's a great exercise for that part of the routine. This next exercise is called a Turkish get-up. You may have, I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with it. And there's a couple different variations out there. I'm just going to take a couple minutes and just go through the variations that I like and give to the members here at the facility and with my clients and athletes. I'm putting it under this postural series of movements along with all those diagonal lifts variations that I showed, but honestly it could go under really just about any category here in this exercise library. I like to always ask clients, I don't tell them specifically what muscle we're working beforehand with an exercise or what particular movement we're going after. I like to ask them afterwards, where do you feel this? Because sometimes if you tell a client, hey, do you feel this? It's an ab exercise. Do you feel it in the abs? They might say yes, even if they don't, just because they're shy or nervous or don't want to give the wrong answer. For some. So I like to ask them after. Don't tell them what muscle specifically that this particular exercise is going after. And when you ask people about the get-up, the answer I typically get is, I'm not sure, and then it'll say, I kind of feel it everywhere. And that's what ultimately I'd love to hear, is kind of feel it here in my hips, I feel it in my shoulder, my obliques. And truly, we're kind of getting after all those different areas. So it's a mobility exercise, it's also a stability exercise. So at different points of the movement, we're opening up the hips a bit. Throughout the movement, we've got that weight overhead, the arm extended, so we're really working on shoulder stability. And all these different aspects of the exercise go into training the core, opening the hips, kind of opening things up, stability of the shoulder. That's all connected. Everything obviously is connected in the body. So if we can get multiple areas, improve multiple areas with one exercise, it just provides a lot of bang for the buck. So it's a great core movement. All this side bending and straightening of the torso is getting after the quote-unquote core, but those obliques specifically. So I'm going to break it down. I'll go through the stages. I'm going to show it once quick, and then we'll go through it a second time, and I'll kind of go a little bit slower. And I like to go in different stages. So I'll show real quick here, and I should point out that I'm going to use a kettlebell. Could use all sorts of different tools. Usually when I teach it with a first timer, I'll either have them take their shoe off literally and have the bottom of the shoe and go, have it just make a fist, and they have to hold it, right? Try to balance the shoe the whole time. Or we'll use something simple like a slider. So just have the fist here, create a fist, and throughout the exercise, they've got to try to keep that slider on the hand. So those are great teaching tools. I like those because it kind of slows things down. Just a light tool, a shoe, a kettlebell, even just creating a fist if you don't have any of these options available. And just slowing them down, I think is a great way for them to kind of get each section of the movement and learn it a little bit more effectively. So we're going to go to the kettlebell, which is probably the most popular variation. There's all sorts of different tools. You can use dumbbells, barbells when you get a little bit more advanced. Holding the kettlebell upside down so it bottoms up, get up. Now you're getting into definitely some more advanced options as well. But we're going to stick with the basics. Always have people move well first before you start adding load or adding more advanced variations. Move well with the base movement first before you start to get a little bit crazy. So kettlebell, so I'm going to start here. So we're going to go left side. Okay, so we're going to press the bell straight up. First two rules I like to give are rule 1, try to keep the arms straight the whole time. Try to always look at the weight the whole time. Okay, arms straight, look at the weight. Now those two hold true throughout the whole exercise. When you're at the top of the movement, you can straighten the head, and I'll show you what I mean. But try to always look up at the weight, try to keep the arms straight. I should mention at the beginning, we try, within any kettlebell movement, whether you're holding it in the rack position or this particular get-up exercise, we don't want to bend wrists. So you want to try to keep the wrist relatively neutral the whole time. Okay? So the kettlebell, so you can see that in the camera, is just resting right on the outside of the wrist, right on the forearm. Okay? But I have a relatively neutral wrist the whole time. Okay? So this is relatively light, but if we're getting heavy weight, you're going to roll from your side onto your back, and then you can use two hands to press it straight up. All right? So since I've got the left side up, I've got the left knee up. So same side knee and arm are together. Okay, this foot's going to be flat. And again, I'm going to go through it one time a little bit quicker, and then I'll break it down a little bit slower for you. And I'll pause at each section so you kind of see how there's a lot of different pieces to this puzzle. So that was one repetition right there. And again, for a newbie or someone just learning the exercise, I'm doing a lot of teaching right here with some new members of the exercise. We just go in pieces. So maybe day 1, it's just a half of a get up, or day 2 is just standing up. And then as we progress, into week 2, we'll get into the full get up. Because there are, like I said, a lot of stages or sections. So I'm going to go through it again and talk about each piece of this puzzle. All right, so again, same side knee and arm are both up, foot is flat. Offside, so my right hand and my right leg, I don't want them straight out, they're off a little bit of an angle. So bring that leg out a little and arm out. So they're relatively parallel to each other, okay? Neck is neutral, head flat on the ground. So the first mistake I see people make is they kind of turn it more into a crunch. So they'll kind of crunch forward and crunch straight up like this, okay? What I like to do instead is teach more of a diagonal drive, okay? I first heard Pavel, who's I'm sure most of you are familiar with, big kettlebell expert and kind of a leader in the field, said lead with the chest, lead with the chest. So the movement initiates and leads with the chest, and I really like that. And I like to add a diagonal drive. So instead of crunching straight up, leading with the chest, we're going to lead with the chest at a diagonal drive. So it creates more of a rolling pattern. Okay, so I like to say it's not a crunch, it's a roll. So we're lead with the chest. You're going to roll to the offside elbow, in this case the right elbow, lead with the chest. So proud chest, diagonal drive, okay? So here, foot's flat, left foot's flat, so I'm going to push through that left foot, and I'm rolling, leading with the chest to the elbow, okay? So that's part one. Part two is just to extend this arm, so come off the elbow on to the arm, but I'm still leading with the chest, so the chest is up. Okay, from here, this is mostly the most challenging part for a lot of folks, is we're going to bridge up. So this is the bridge part. So I'm going to push through this left foot, stabilize through that right arm. So I'm bridging up, so I'm squeezing the glutes, extending the hips. This is where I'm going to bring that front leg, so the right leg back to the knee. So I like to tell folks, you're going to bring that front leg, the right leg, the knee back towards the same side wrist. Okay, so you can see they're about a couple inches apart here. And if you look, I should have a relatively straight line from the arm, from the top hand to the bottom hand. So the arm should form a relatively straight line, okay? And again, what I said at the beginning, the arm is straight and I'm always looking up at the weight, okay? Now from here, I'm pretty supported. I'm pretty balanced. I've got a lot of weight in the knee, little weight in that foot, little weight in this hand, okay? From here, I'm just gonna straighten my torso up, okay? Windshield wipe this back foot, so I'm in a lunge position, okay? So all I did is I call it a windshield wipe. So that foot pivoted out, so I'm nice and straight. Everything's straight ahead now. All right? And basically, I'm in a lunge position. I'm just going to stand straight up. Boom. Okay? And this is where you can kind of look forward. So the biceps should be by the ear. Okay? I'm not hyperextended there in the back. Now that's half the rep. So to go back down, you just reverse all of the steps. So I was in that lunge position. So I'm going to reverse lunge back down to the knee. Boom. Okay? I'm going to look back up at the weight. I'm going to windshield wipe that foot again. Boom. Okay, so I windshield wipe that foot. Hand's gonna find the ground. So I'm back in that same position I was in, straight arms from hand to hand. The bridge part comes next. So I want to bring this back leg through so I can come under my right hip. So I'm gonna put weight in this right hand and left foot, bridge through onto the right hip. Okay, then I'm gonna go back to that elbow where I was a minute ago, and then slowly I'm gonna try to extend, come all the way back down onto the low back. Okay, then you can use the other hand if you want. Roll to the side and put the weight down. And that last part there is important for me. When I said slowly, some people get here, they're a little bit fatigued, they just kind of fall back straight down. Okay, they just kind of collapse on their shoulders, so they just kind of here to here. I want you to try to lead, now leading with the chest going back, under control. So really, this movement here, just doing it even with no weight, I really feel my core, my obliques engage as they try to control the descent. So they're trying to decelerate the body coming down, okay? So that right there, if you look again at all the pieces, all that, my shoulder, my left shoulder's on fire right now, just from holding the weight over the head the entire time, all the way up, all the way down. Okay, we get a lot of shoulder work here on that bottom shoulder with this. Okay, I'm getting some mobility through the chest, trying to stay tall. The bridge is any sort of bridge variation is great for the glutes. Here I get a nice groin stretch, okay? Obliques have to work to straighten the body out. And then in the lunge position, we even get the legs working a little bit, reverse lunge, and then repeat all the steps to go back down. So you can see there's a lot of moving parts there. And that was just a couple minutes breaking it down. I mean, there's whole half-day workshops I know that really break this movement down into small pieces. So you can really get a good grasp of it. But that one right there, again, is a good way to kind of break it down to those pieces. And if someone's new to it, just do the first section, just to the elbow, or just that extension, or just the bridge. They don't have to complete the whole thing. You just tell them this is the half get-up exercise that we're doing for the day. Get-ups I like as far as if we want to talk quickly about program design. You can put them really, I think, anywhere in the program. Typically, I put them in the beginning as well. Before we get into our main lifts, if it's a strength day, or even if it's kind of more of a conditioning and we're going to do some sort of interval training. I like to do them at the beginning. I just did 1 rep and I'm dripping sweat, so they're a great kind of movement to elevate the heart rate and get kind of everything warmed up and get the blood flowing a little bit. So after some foam rolling and some basic dynamic warm-up movements, I love this. Some diagonal lifts. Couple 3 or 4 on each side of a get-up, and then we'll get into the lift. So consider, when it comes to program design, incorporating this Turkish get-up exercise into the beginning of your routines. All right, this next one is going to deal with some heavy carries, okay? I put this under the posture series as well. Again, this could really go anywhere in the core, this whole core conditioning exercise library. But I like it in the posture because that's a cue that I give often when we're doing any sort of heavy carry or farmer walk is tall posture, upright posture. So especially if you're doing some sort of offload, so a unilateral, meaning you've got a dumbbell or a kettlebell on one side and it's trying to pull you over. You want to maintain a tall posture, keep the spine tall, shoulders back. And again, the same holds true if you're holding kettlebell or weight on each side, is we don't want it pulling us forward or back or anything like that. So it's always a tall posture. So that's why this fits nicely into the posture series. It's just a good cue. Tall spine, stay upright when you start walking with that weight. As far as variations, we could do a whole half-hour video on different variations, but I'm just going to leave that up to your creativity. Really, whatever you have available, you could turn into some sort of farmer walk or heavy carry or suitcase carry. If you have dumbbells, if you have kettlebells, if you have barbells, you know, holding a barbell on each side, obviously there's much more of a stability concern with those. Even holding plates in the hand really work grip strength, fingertip control, holding the edge of a plate, 25 pound, 45 pounds are tough, depending on the thickness of them, of course. So there's so many different variations, holding a med ball against the side. Really, it's just up to your creativity. I'm just going to show a couple variations with kettlebells and then a trap bar. Those are ones that I like quite a bit as far as tools to use. But again, really you're just limited by your creativity and, of course, what you have access to as far as what you can use. As far as positioning, let me grab the kettlebells. Again, this is another one where you can really use a number of different variations. The typical farmer walk is just having the weights by the side, okay, and going for a walk. Typically these we would like to do about 40 yards or so, or it might be timed if they're just holding the weight while their partner works, something like that. But we usually have them moving. Our space here isn't very big, but 20 yards down, 20 yards back, so it works out to be about 40 yards. So regardless of what tool you're using, it's always, again, upright posture, nice and tall when you're walking forward, back, or whatever it is. It's shoulders back, weight by the side, and really crushing the grip. So we've got the traditional position here, farmer walk, the suitcase carry where we're offloaded. So again, this is pulling me this way, so I need to engage the core, the obliques, of course, stay tall, and then walk, okay, and try not to let it throw me off center. So in this situation, we would do maybe 20 yards down, okay, bring the weight in the other hand, and then come 20 yards back the other way. So that's another one. One I like to use quite a bit is a rack position. So that's up here in the traditional rack with the kettlebells. Neutral wrists, elbows in by your side, and then the fists are right underneath the chin. So everything's nice and tight. I like this variation a lot, especially for combat athletes. It kind of presses on that diaphragm a little bit on the lungs, constricts the breathing, so it really makes you have to focus on trying to control the body, calm the body down, and focus on breathing. Okay, so this right here is a more advanced variation, but especially when you're walking, keeping things tight, people will start to do this. They'll throw them up on the shoulders. Okay, just tell them, get shoulders by the ribs. Get those elbows down by the ribs, keep things tight. Still tall posture here. So this is a nice variation, and you can kind of change things up. You can have one up, one down, so you're walking like this, one direction. On the way back, you switch it, hand by the side. So that's position 2. So we've got position 1, if you will, here, position 2 here, and then position 3 would be straight up over the head. Okay, definitely going to go lighter here with your weights, whatever you're using, but just walking with that overhead position, really going to challenge not only that core, but big time shoulder stability too when you're walking, especially if you get any sort of load up there above the head. So those are some variations with the kettlebells. Again, those could all be done with dumbbells or any sort of plate. Let me show you real quick what I mean. So with the plates, if I had 2, of course, just working grip strength, going for a walk here. You could hold a plate here. Of course, you could hold a plate overhead. Okay, so again, it's that creativity and what you have access to that's going to determine what works for you. With the trap bar, of course, there's going to be some weight on there for most folks, but nice position. This kind of helps you stay nice and tall here again. Everything else is the same. It's just a different tool for the job. So of course you'd walk down and then come on back with that one there. All right, so typically kettlebells are a great choice. As far as program design, where I fit these in, I like these as kind of an active rest. So if we're doing some sort of interval, whether it's 2 movements, whether it's 3 or 4 movements, I typically like to have one movement in the circuit or in the interval, the complex, if you will, that is more of a rest or active rest. I like to use the air quotes. Members here hate the air quotes, but so if we're doing some sort of interval, so give me, let's say we're doing med ball slam and then 100 meter on the ski-erg. Then the third station would be a farmer walk or some sort of heavy carry. So 2 kind of dynamic movements that don't take very long, 10 seconds there, 20 seconds there, and then you're walking for 20 seconds. So kind of getting that heart rate back down a little bit. So after they bang out 100 meters on the ski, they're going to bend over, grab 2 weights and go for a walk. So their heart rate's going to return a bit, but they're still working grip, still working posture, core still active. So it's a good way to kind of continue to work the body, but allow the heart rate to kind of return back down a little bit. It's going to stay elevated, of course, because you're holding some weight and you're moving, but it's not what you see at a traditional gym where someone's on the elliptical reading their newspaper or watching TV, and then they'll stop for a minute, grab some water, check out the girls next to them, something like that. So you can always be more productive with your time, typically in the gym. So during your rest period, if it's some sort of more of an interval, grab some weights, go for a walk. Or if you're with a partner, one thing we do here quite a bit is some partner training where someone's going to be busting their butt on something, working hard. I'll use the ski-erg or the rower machine for an example. They're going to bust out 250 meters. Your partner's rowing and you're just hanging out, holding them, encouraging them, getting that teamwork going, but you're still working as well, crushing the grip, holding that weight, and then they'd return the favor in that interval style. So farmer carry is a great exercise, great way to move to incorporate, great way to add some core work in during a rest period. I like to call it kind of a moving plank, so because everything's tight. So you think of the traditional plank, forearms and toes, where you got to stay tight. So you got to stay tight as well when you're in a farmer carry, but it's moving. That wasn't my quote. I think Dan John's the first person I heard say that. Think of a heavy carry as a moving plank. So it's a great way to kind of cue it as well. So in a plank, you kind of have things braced. So you want to be braced, but you want to be kind of comfortable behind that engaged core as well. So heavy carries are a great exercise. I think a lot of people it's underutilized, so it's a great way, a great exercise that I think should be worked in. And like I say, it works in well in an active rest scenario.